welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. This session really is essentially the Avon committee trying to put together the opportunity for you guys, for everybody to kind of ask questions about really returning to flying safely. We know what happened with the last lockdown last year. It was good and bad, as we all know. So, what we want to try and do here is answer all those burning questions that you've got. What we really I don't want to really get into is the politics of, when or, why we should get flying. I really don't want to get into that today. There's a lot of it on the group. The Avon advice is, we'll stick with what the BHPA says. That's what we're pushing out. So let's try and keep this to, how should I return to flying safely? That's kind of the rules of engagement, if you like. I will record this, so just be thoughtful on what you say. Try and keep your language, as clean as you can. I like to try and share these on YouTube for everybody, so that they can see them. So I've got a series of questions that essentially I'm going to run through that various people over the last few days have kind of presented. But do feel free to ask questions if we start talking about a particular subject and you want to expand on it. Please feel free. We've probably got a couple of hours. An hour and a half would be nice, but we've probably got 2 hours max, take us up to 9 o'clock. So pretty free flowing. So yeah, anybody got any questions before we kick off? Silence is good. So I think I'm going to pick on. So the first question I've got, and who shall I direct? I'm probably going to direct this at Wes, actually, because Wes likes to talk, so he can talk us through this. So Wes is our sites officer, as we know, cross-country pilot, etc. So Wes, first question to you that we've got: are there any sites that we really should avoid, or not necessarily avoid, but consider, carefully as part of the comeback? Please, over to you.
Thanks, Sean. So obviously the sites that we're going to fly when we come back are going to be massively dictated by the conditions, right? The wind, etc. My advice would be probably avoid a new site unless it's a really open, friendly site. So if you're just coming back after a long time and say the wind's on at Ubley, but you've never flown Ubley before, I would highly recommend not going and flying Ubley. It can be really boisterous. It can be full on. Lots of experienced pilots don't like the site. There's wire fences. And you have to be conscious of the fact that just because you can fly, it doesn't mean you should fly. Now, if the wind's on and you've never flown Westbury before, go to Westbury 100%. Let everybody know that you're going to Westbury. Or even if you've flown Westbury before, but it wasn't for a year, let people know in the groups that you're going to Westbury and go there, because it's a big open site and it attracts lots of helpful people who are willing to help you out. The risks at Westbury are somewhat limited to pilots. The pilots are the main risk at Westbury. It's a really nice, friendly site. Now, also, Froster would be one that I would probably avoid if you haven't flown Froster before and you're coming back after a long layoff. I would say don't go to Froster. There's going to be the chance to go somewhere else. Maybe have a look at if you're going to go to Selsley. Also, the biggest factor, I think, is this. Say the date that we are allowed to fly is March the 29th. And on March the 29th, I'm going to use Froster as an example. And on March the 29th, the wind is just north of west. And you're thinking, oh, but Froster would work. Oh, it's closest to me and it'll work. You're probably pushing it going somewhere where the wind is marginally on that site. Just because the conditions look like, oh, I could possibly get a flight. Approach it the same way you have always up until now. Don't just be so fixated on going flying after a long layoff that you overlook the fact that it's a couple of degrees variable either way. If the conditions aren't right on that site, and other pilots aren't pushing to go to that site, just don't go there. Like, it's just, I think it's just a case of assess each site like you want it to be perfect, because the last thing you want to be doing is flying a new site or flying a site that's marginal after such a layoff. So we don't have any nasty sites. We have Scaresfield or Haresfield, which can be a little bit of a pain in the bum if there's lots of people and stuff, and Ubley can be tricky. Mere, we've seen a lot of accidents in Mere, but we don't have sites that are particularly dangerous. But we do have sites that can be really tricky in variable conditions. So my advice is make sure the conditions are really on for that site. And listen, if you're plus 50 hours, if you're a pilot who you haven't flown for a while, the best thing you can do is put on the group or message another pilot you know and ask the advice for the site that you're going to go to. No one's going to think you're stupid, and everyone might be thinking the same thing.
Wes, can I just add on to that? Would you consider, the coast as an option? For those first few flights. I know you're going to smile, and I know why.
Me personally, or
no. So think
no.
For the group.
In all fairness, if I was looking, right, we're gonna use March the 29th from here on out. Everyone who speaks or answers a question, March the 29th is the date we're going to use. We're going to assume the weather's on March the 29th. That's the date that we should all stick to from here on out. So March the 29th comes, it's flyable. However, inland flying looks like it could be a little bit rubbish, or the wind direction is slightly, I don't know, south of east. So we've got no real good flying site nearby. I'm going to the coast to fly. 100%. And I don't ever fly at the coast, but I will 100% have a day at the coast on March the 29th. If all other options are looking like they're variable or not very good, why mess around on a hill that's going to be really horrible on my first flight back, or not enjoyable, or even not flyable, when I could go to the coast if the coast is on and have a good day's flying and enjoy myself?
That makes sense, Wes. And I for one will be definitely heading south. That's for sure. Thanks for that, Wes. Anybody got any other bits on that one?
Yeah, sure. Froster. Hi, Rob King here.
Hello,
yeah,
Rob.
Froster is one of our more technical sites, and it is pilot rated, and the guide says pilot plus 100 hours. If you don't meet those criteria, you really should avoid it. It's quite a technical site. I mean, in good conditions, it can be very easy to fly, but it's very often the case that it's actually quite a tricky site to fly, even for experienced people. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, I think the general principle for most people is going to be, to go to that easy site when returning, your Westbury's, your Mears, your Selsley's, arguably. But yeah, absolutely, Haresfield, perhaps.
Can I just say, sorry, 2 seconds, Sean. I believe I said it, and you just said it there, which highlighted it for me. The use of the word easy site. There's going to be no easy site if the weather's marginal. So that's the thing to remember as well, is there's no easy site if you're pushing the boundaries just because it's your first day able to fly. That's one big thing. Just because it's your first day back, just like if the wind's 5 miles an hour more than you've ever flown, don't even go out. Don't go to the hill to have a look, because if you've never flown in, say, 18-mile-an-hour winds at Westbury, why are you going to go after a layoff to Westbury when the wind is 18 miles? Leave your glider alone. Go to work. You've had this amount of time off. Another day is not going to hurt you. Don't just think, oh, we've got an easy site and I can finally fly, and push those boundaries.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Okay, let's ask another question then. So we've got Tim Carr, who's obviously our experienced chief coach. Which was Tim? Oh, here's a good one, Tim. So Tim, we've been told we can go flying. So the 29ths have arrived. It's all good. Yay, we can go. Have you got any thoughts about what we can do at home? The night before, the day before we go out?
Well, prep. I think the worst situation you can get yourself in is the morning that it all comes good, rushing like bananas to get yourself flying, rushing like mad. I'm guilty of this, going to work and then giving myself a half day, rushing like mad. None of my stuff's charged. Not even sure which site to go to. Not really looked at the weather. Just know that other people are going there. So real lack of preparation. So if you are going to go, fully prep, get everything charged. Make sure you got a radio charged. Get yourself keyed up on the weather and be completely prepared. And the other thing, the obvious one, being chief coach, ask for a coach. If you're going to go off and, push the coaches into helping you, put a message out saying, can any coaches just give me half an hour at the beginning of the day? Most coaches will be fine to do that. They're going to want to fly as well. They're going to be quite desperate to fly. But that's what we're there for. Half an hour at the beginning of the day, no problem. Or spend the day with us, buddy up with a coach. Make sure you've got radio and, partner up and fly. So that would be my advice. It's good preparation the night before. And like Wesley said, ask yourself, do you really want to go? If it's marginal, you're going to be so desperate to fly, you're going to take chances. So maybe even consider, I'm not going to bother. It's going to be busy, so I'm not going to bother. It's marginal. I'll go next time. I'll go on the next one.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. Anybody got any other bits they want to ask Tim on? The essentially the day before prep, if you like.
How would you ask for a coach? Forums. Put it on the forums.
If you're already a member of the Thames Valley, you can also. We're going to be everyone who is a coach is going to be wearing a yellow armband to signify we're coaches. So at Thames Valley, after just I know that Sky Surfers are doing the same. There's going to be ground handling sessions as well. I know there's a lot of crossover between the two, so that I'm not sure what Avon's doing in that regard, but we're going to all make sure we're very visible.
Yeah, good idea. We were toying with the idea of a flag or hat, T-shirt. We couldn't agree in the end, so we didn't do anything like that. But forums, we have got forums, active forums, and if anyone wants a coach and don't know the coaches' names, ask me, and I will contact the coaches and try and appoint a coach that can help you out.
Great, thanks for that, Tim. Let's go to our fairly new chairman, Mr. Kingston. Welcome, Rob. Rob, so I've got a question for you here. Obviously, and this is not necessarily a question, pointing at, coming out of lockdown. I think it's probably a generic question, but should I be pilot rated before I think about flying XC?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? Okay, so traditionally, this time of year, we'd be looking at having BCC rounds as we went into the spring, and those are very good ways for pilots to get involved in cross country. So, I mean, strictly to fly cross country, you should be pilot rated, because as soon as you leave a hill, you're going to go near other airspace or other users, other pilots, and you really need to know where you are, where the airspace is, and you need some idea of what you're doing. So you really need a bit of help. So the BCC's club pilots normally buddy up with pilots in their team, pilot rated pilots, for those rounds. So we would encourage pilots to get their pilot rating, and Sean gets involved in that, and so we would recommend that. So I think what I would say is that most people should just really concentrate on getting current, and obviously at the moment people shouldn't really be leaving the hill once they fly anyway. Hopefully that will come shortly. So I think people should start. I mean, if you've been flying a season, then then I would have thought most people would be thinking actively about trying to get pilot rated. It's not too difficult, it's not too onerous, and it's actually a very good learning discipline. So strictly yes. If the low level competitions like CC, or if we manage to get some club competitions like we did last year at Westbury together, then we can buddy people up with pilot rated or more experienced pilots, and they could go cross country as part of those low level competitions. So that's probably the ideal way. So yes, we would encourage people to pilot rated.
Yeah, and it's interesting, certainly for the low air timers that, I work with, we've tried to do some low level competitions, and that's the safe way to do it. So it's a controlled environment, so essentially you're not just, wandering over the back and bumbling into airspace, and that's how we do it with the BCC. It's a proper contrived, you're going to take off here, you're going to fly in this direction, and in flying that direction, you're going to come up against this airspace. So it's that pre-briefing. But yeah, thanks for that, Rob. Anybody got any other bits they want to add to that question?
One of the advantages as well of going with coach is they are witnessing your tasks.
All good for the pilot rating, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, where should we go next? Okay, this is quite a good one actually. And interestingly, I remember Tim Pentreath's video. I'm not sure if Tim's still on the call, but there was a video Tim put together last year in the first lockdown where he was putting his glider to bed, and it was quite funny. Actually, put his glider to bed and opened it out. So, Tim Bishop, I guess this is one for you, of kind of our safety stroke reserve expert, etc. So, let's ask you, how do I know my kit is still safe for flight? Bearing in mind that for a lot of us, it's probably going to be 6 months plus since that equipment last came out. Can I send that one to you, Tim?
With pleasure. Well, the first thing is find it all. It's probably, you might not know where all of it is, so have a rummage around and find it all. I'll tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to post a couple of links in the chat. So the first one I'm posting now is the BHPA page that shows you a list of all the repackers. And the second one is a little Google map that I made, which shows you all the service centers that I could find. So I'd strongly recommend that everybody use this time to get your reserves repacked. You've got repackers all over the country. You've got plenty of service centers there. I've just done exactly this. I've just repacked my reserve. I've just got my wing back from a service, and very pleased with it. If for any reason you can't make use of those services, then do it yourself and use the time to check your kit over. That's the short answer. Any questions on that? The other one is the other one I would add to that as well, by the way, is check the age of your parachute. If you're not certain of when it was, then talk to one of the repackers.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I'm guilty. My glider's still sat in its bag. It's not been out since Christmas. So that's certainly something I'll be doing this weekend.
Yeah, mine's got its own shelf, as you can see. There it is.
Oh, I won't keep my wing like that.
Nice. Unlike me, it's stored under no pressure.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. Where should we go next? Let's have a look. I'm going to go back to Wes because he's been quiet for far too long. It's not like this.
It's uncharacteristic.
Yeah, he doesn't know what's coming next, you see, now, so this is what I like.
He's got his nervous face on.
So here's a good one for you, Wes, as our resident XC expert. Can't believe I'm saying that.
Neither can I.
So if I haven't got XC, but it looks great on the first day, So we're talking about this 29th again. It's that flyball day, and it looks wonderful. Should I avoid the temptation? And I guess that's quite broad, given the level of experience we've got, Wes.
So are you saying if you've never gone XC before?
No. I'm just saying. Oh, sorry. Yes, I am. Yes, that is the question. Yes. If I haven't gone XC, but it looks great on the first day, should I avoid the temptation? So I guess that's somebody who's never done it before.
Okay, I'm going to approach this from an XC point of view. Last year when we got to fly, my first flight of the season was from Westbury to Poole. Was my first flight of the season. Even if it's an XC-able day, I won't be going XC on the first day back this time. I just think there's lots of factors to take into consideration. And that is transport, the logistics of getting back, all the other sorts of stuff. And March the 29th is quite early in the season, so you're not missing a massive day to go and, to miss out on. So for me, I personally have no intention to go on XC, and I try and pretty much only fly XC. If you've never gone XC before, you have to ask yourself, what's your motivation for going XC that day if you've never done it before? If you've got to this point in your flying career, is a March day really your best time? March day, first day back after a pandemic, is it really the best idea to go XC? You're like, what are you hoping to achieve? I'll never tell anybody they shouldn't go XC. We're pilots, we're adults. You have to fly how you want to fly and do the things that you want to do. But I'm telling you this, you're not going to do anything outstanding or amazing on your first day back if you've never done XC before on March the 29th. So my advice would be enjoy being on your wing again. Like, if you've go and do some wing overs out the front, or try and do a little small triangle 5k and then reverse it 5k, so you're never more than 5k away from the hill. Do some wing overs, try some spiral dives, I think for what you're going to gain from doing your first XC on March the 29th after a long period off, I think you will benefit a lot more spending 2 hours getting used to your wing and how your wing feels above your head again. If it's one of those days where XC's on, what you've also really got to be looking at is that means it's a thermic day, a good thermic day. I think after a long period of layoff, if you're not, we're going to assume that someone who's going for their first ever XC is the lesser end of experience level. That might not be the case, but that's what I'm going to assume while I'm putting this out there. If that is the case, and you're looking to pursue your first XC, it's going to be a punchy day on your first day back after a long layoff. My advice would be you should have either been in the air before it was punchy to get yourself used to being back on a wing again, or you should be waiting until it calms down a little bit and then be thinking of flying, maybe asking other people what the air's like when they land or something. Because the benefit of going XC for your first ever time on the first day back, there is none. It's just to high five yourself, because no one's going to care, and it's going to score you peanuts in the league. And I'm guessing if it's your first XC, you're not planning on winning the league that year anyway. So from my advice to anyone would be spend the 3 hours that you would have done at 100k, spend that time doing wing overs and then spiraling back up to $3,000 and then doing wing overs and spirals and, pitch control and stuff. Spend that time doing that. If after 3 hours of doing that, you're bored, pack up your wing and wait for the next XC day.
Makes perfect sense to me, Wes. For me, I'm off to the coast. The first opportunity, I'm off to the coast, just because, I believe it's a bit safer, and B, I just want to fly the wing. I just, exactly as you say, I just want to be underneath the wing again.
Yeah. Do you want to at this juncture, do you want to just maybe open up and see if anyone wants to ask any questions about the 3 or 4 that we've answered already before we cover some more?
Yeah.
So maybe nobody will want to, but I'm guessing if anybody wants to, now would be a good time. Otherwise, we might lose what Tim said, might get lost in the rubbish that I've just said. And just
We've had
give people
one.
a chance.
We've had one come through on the chat. Rob is asking, what would be the advice for a CP plus 10 to get first few flights at the coast?
Go to the coast.
Yeah. And I would potentially add to that, just to reinforce what Tim said, grab a coach, listen out on the groups, see who else is going, and absolutely try to buddy up with as many people as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, can I chip in there? If you are flying other club sites, I think there's a couple things that you need to plan ahead to do that. Firstly, other club sites, not all of them are open. So, for instance, Thames Valley site, you have to be a Valley club. A lot of the South Coast are either Wessex or Devon and Somerset Condors. Most of those are open. You need to check. And if you're going to the coast, try and tie up with either on the forums people in our club who are going there, or at the very least someone who's in those clubs on the South Coast who you can meet up with, can give a site briefing. So, so do plan ahead. Just rock up at the coast and hope it's all going to be great. So take a bit of time and effort to plan ahead, coordinate your trip down there, and definitely get a site briefing and advice from some of the locals. But apart from that, they're brilliant sites.
Yeah, if I could just add one thing, Sean.
Yeah, go for it,
I
Richard.
mean, what I would say as far as the Devon and Somerset site is concerned, I wouldn't perhaps recommend EAP for a fairly low hours pilot who's very rusty. It's had a clip fall. The wind can do weird things down there. But it does have a very safe bottom landing on the beach. So if the right people are going there, and there'll always be coaches there, then fine. On the other hand, Beer is a fantastic site, very benign, long coastal run available, massive space if it's flying reasonably well.
But a hell of a walk up from the bottom landing.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I think
You need the exercise, Sean.
I do need
I think the important thing is treat the coast like any site that you've never been to before and ask other people about going flying. It's not just because it's the coast, it's still a new site if you've not flown it before. So speak to the people who fly it regularly, because I know Sean's done this before, and Sean's one of the most experienced coastal flyers in Avon. I know Sean's gone to the coast and he's had to divert and go to another coastal site because what he thought was on local knowledge has turned around and said, no, actually, it's not as the weather forecast had said, you're going to have to go here. And he's diverted to another site on the coast. So treat the site like any other site, treat the coast like any other site that you've not flown, and speak to the people who fly it regularly or are there, and then try and go down and liaise with people. It's a ball ache of a drive on your own. If you can get 3-4 people of you to go together, go together.
Richard, I noticed you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask your question or make your point?
Mentioned wing. First, I've seen too many accidents as fire and it's your first day back. The temptation can be sometimes to just go and just going XC may be a bad idea, but getting big on your wing overs before you've got entire wing could also end up you having to throw your washing. It was just I heard that little just everyone you're doing don't steady control if in fact if you steady controlled and same height and cadence for a period of time, incredibly difficult. I can't do it. I've been flying for years. I can go big, go tall, but I cannot keep them at the same level each time. So if you practice something, try and practice doing that, because that will get you used to using your the brake control, the weight shift, and everything. Sorry, Wes, that was just one little point.
Yeah, I just think like we shouldn't be telling anybody on here tonight how to do wingovers. If you don't know how to do wingovers, don't go out and do wingovers. If you know how to do wingovers, go out and do wingovers. It's that simple. It's not, if it's your first day back flying, nobody's saying, yeah, take this opportunity to learn how to do a wingover. If you don't know how to do wingovers, don't go out and do wingovers on your first day back flying, just in the same way as don't go out and go cross country. It's about, I think there's way too much emphasis being put on the fact that it's welcome back to flying. You're flying like you do any other time. Do what you always do, but let's approach it with some caution. If you don't do wingovers or spiral dives or helis, don't do them. Don't pick the first day back for the day to do them, or the second.
I think the point to that piece there, Wes, and I can't. Richard was breaking up a little bit there. Was trying to ease yourself into it, as you said right at the start. Slowly. I think that was the point that Richard, your microphone was really breaking up there. By the way,
really bad.
Sorry. Yes, that was exactly the point I was making. Ease in. It's tempting sometimes. So happy to be back. I'm very good with that. Or certainly when I was younger, I was. I just lived with Clayton trying to see what to do. And if someone told me go and do wingovers, I was like, woohoo!
Rick, just a quick one there from Rick. Rick's put something in the chat group there about buddying up and sharing lifts, etc. The advice is always going to be is to follow the government guidelines, Rick. So at the moment, and right through past the 29th, we can't organise, we can't be seen to be organising, groups of people meeting up and getting in cars together. But I think what Wes is suggesting is just don't turn blindly up to a hill. Try and have it so that if you're not sure that somebody is going to be there to meet you. But yeah, completely get your point there, Rick, and definitely that we will be asking people to continue to follow those guidelines. So thanks for that. Anything from anybody else before we go on to the next one? I'm going to pick on Tim Carr next because he's been very quiet. So Tim, this one leads nicely on. So again, we'll talk about the 29th. So it's that wonderful 29th day. It's going to be the classic. Can't believe I've said the C word. But what problems on any site really doesn't really matter. Do you think we'll see on that first? That first day out of lockdown, that first flyable day, what kind of issues do you think we're going to see?
Right, yeah. I'm still here. that the worst case scenario I think we can have is it, suddenly it's a Sunday, it's the first day back, it's perfectly flyable, just absolutely epic, but in a direction it puts everyone on sites they don't want to be on. That would be a really bad case scenario. But that first day back, didn't we once count 65 pilots on Westbury? Just an ordinary Sunday that happened to be really good, and we'd had a short layoff. So you're looking at just hugely busy numbers.
I've seen it midweek, Tim, to be honest with you, and I think you're absolutely right. I think what I would suggest to people is don't be in a rush to get in the air. Just because you turn up, there's 30, 40 other gliders in the air doesn't mean you have to take off.
Also, as well, people aren't going to be able to shoot down to the landing field and pick you up like usual. So be sensible. Westbury's really good because people come down and pick you up. There won't be a lot of that going on with COVID restrictions still in place.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Wes, and that equally leads into, dare I say, XC. The general public are going to be less wanting to retrieve us. I suspect. I think that will be the case, but we'll see. But yeah, good point, Wes.
Back onto that answer though, problems I can see is the chaos of numbers. There could be a huge amount of numbers on a site that doesn't take that many pilots very well. Somewhere like Froster, or I don't particularly like the Malverns when it's that busy. That'll take quite a few pilots, but it's just not a nice site when it's busy, especially not if it's scratchy. But you're going to have problems like mixture of pilots, because we're going to have a lot of hang gliders that we're going to want to be there as well. Paragliders going to want to be there, kiters, modelers, all on the same site. So you're going to have numbers, you're going to have a mixture, everybody not being current, people desperate to fly, not considering whether they should or shouldn't fly, just desperate to fly, kit out, get in, fly, without properly considering the conditions. So we're not only rusty with our flying, we're rusty with the way we're going to assess the situation and the way we're going to assess the weather. So be people so desperate to fly, they won't be considering, should I be flying? Is this any good? It'll be just turn up and fly. And that's what we've got to avoid. We need to sit back and watch. We need to sit back and really think about everything before we take off.
Thanks for that, Tim. David's just put something up in the chat there, which I think he's right, and I guess we've kind of skipped over it for the reason that everybody's talking about flying. So David's asking the question about ground handling, and it is clearly a key part. Certainly if you've not had an opportunity to get into your football field or cricket pitch, I'm not sure they'd be quite happy if you're ground handling in the local cricket field. But if you've not had the opportunity and the first time you're out, is on the hill, what's your thoughts, Tim, on ground handling? I mean, for me personally, it's the number one. It's the first thing we should be doing.
Oh, you can't do enough ground handling. I think every flight that's ever gone bad has gone bad at that point. That's the point when your nerves build up. If you have a nervous flight, it's the ground handling part. The difficulty getting off. I think that's another problem we're going to get on the sites first day back, is people are going to want a ground handle, but they're just going to try and do it before they take off. And you must ground handle. Your ground handling's got to be good. That would be something to consider even doing before you think about flying. Just get in the backfield, or leading up, let's say it's 29th, leading up to the 29th, ground handle all the way up to the 29th, so you're confident to fly on the 29th. But if you do coming out on that day, ground handle back from the front, and watch out for people that will ground handle on the front.
Sure, and I've written myself a little checklist if it helps.
Go for it.
You'd have to tell us to know if it helps.
Yeah, I've decided when I first go out ground handling, I'm going to put it on my little knee pad thing. So firstly is reverse kiting indefinitely, so that I can not keep dropping the wing, because I always feel rusty at the start and I think, oh, this wind's really wobbly, and actually it's me being rubbish. And then when I'm comfortable reverse kiting, I'm going to maybe leave some objects on the ground and walk around those so I can move around comfortably in reverse. And then forward kiting, firstly for 1 minute without dropping the wing, and then 2 minutes without dropping the wing, and then 5 minutes without dropping the wing. And then once I'm comfortable with that, I'll walk around and try and go as far away as I can. And then the other thing I find really helps is doing the tip touches. Go back to a reverse, maybe touch one wing tip, maybe go and leave a rucksack around and try and touch that with my other wing tip.
Hey Tim,
It's
Matt. I think you've missed the key one, which is launching. Bringing it up from the ground above your head, stabilizing and putting it down again, and doing that 10 times before you consider anything else.
I'd completely agree. It's one that I tend to overlook because luckily I don't have too many problems with that. But for people with very, very low airtime or very, very rusty, it's a great reminder to do that, and maybe set yourself a target of doing 20 of those or something. And again, like Tim says, choose a nice safe area, get yourself away from everybody.
I think our three big sites have got that though, Tim. Westbury's got huge ground handling. Selsley, I mean, goodness knows, it doesn't get any better than Selsley, let's be honest. And Mere, to a certain extent, is not too bad either. So there's plenty of space to go and do that. And I absolutely, urge people, don't just, glider out the car, walk to the front, glider out the bag, above your head and go. Spend some time. Either, do it now, go to your field, wherever it might be, start those things now, start getting used to standing under that wing again. Wes, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just think like everything's been so overthought. Just get out and play with your glider. Get out into a field or on the hill and play with your glider. Spend 3 hours. I once went to Westbury with Tim Carr. Tim Carr mentored me and taught me how to fly, okay? From 0 hours all the way up to like 150 hours. Everything I did was because Tim Carr was with me, showing me, helping me. Tim Carr used to drive me to Westbury. Hour and 15-minute drive just to go and ground handle. And I'd be there 3-4 hours until it was dark. And Tim was like, right, let's go get a curry now. And just do that. If you're experienced or not, don't overcomplicate things. Get out and ground handle. If you can't cobra launch, teach yourself how to cobra launch. If you can't do a reverse launch and keep it stable, do that. Do everything you can. Just play with it. Have fun. Make it a game. Enjoy it. Remember as well, listen, I'll take you now to a PWC and you'll see some of the worst ground handling you've ever seen. And you'll see some of the best pilots in the world. Ground handling is not going to save you or keep you safe in the air. It's going to make you better. So don't also think, oh, I've been ground handling, so now I can go out and fly on the first day. If you've been ground handling for the last 55 hours and is a punchy, horrible, winds 5 degrees off the hill day, don't launch your glider, no matter how much ground handling you've been doing. Ground handling is not now your substitute for making the right decision. It's something we can do to help, but let's not overcomplicate it. You should be ground handling as much as you can anyway. If it's a day, you'll regularly see me ground handle, and I think Tim Carr probably ground handles and messes around more than anybody on the hill at Westbury, and he's probably got more hours than all of us put together ground handling his wing. So it's just a case of do lots of it all the time, but don't think it's a substitute for the lack of flying you've been doing. It isn't. Don't go out and do. I saw someone post me go, I'm going to do 6 hours between now. Why have you put a limit on the hours? Like, they could be crap hours where the wind's not in the right direction, so you're not really ground handling. There is no number. Just go out as much as you can, ground hand as much as you can, and then be just as cautious the first time you leave the hill as if you hadn't done any ground handling.
Thanks, Wes. Should we go on to another question? Yeah, let's do that. Let's go to Rob Kingston again. He's been a bit quiet. He thinks he's going to get away with it, but he's not. So, Rob, what's your thoughts? And I know we've covered a bit of this already. Richard Froggatt's just mentioned a bit about it. But coming out of lockdown and flying other clubs' sites, obviously we're quite fortuitous in Avon to have a number of reciprocal agreements. What's your thoughts on that, Rob? I guess should we stay local to our local known sites? Just what's your thoughts, really?
It largely depends, because I mean for instance, let's say it goes easterly, then your choice of sites gets quite limited. I mean, by and large, you're going to go to Wales if you can, or you're going to go to the Malvern Hills. So it depends a bit on the wind direction. What I would say is, if you're traveling to other sites, as I said earlier, you really need to do your homework and make sure that the site you're going to is appropriate to your skill levels, and that you're going to get a warm welcome and a brief when you get there on how to fly it safely. So you really need to talk to the other people, and when you get to the hill, introduce yourself and ask whether there's a coach there or someone who's experienced enough to give you a briefing. I think there's a lot of value in traveling. And I mean, you know, Wales has got some fantastic sites, and I mean, who knows what the situation will be in Wales on the 29th of March. Hopefully the sites are going to be open. So they're very good. The coastal sites are very good, and there's a lot of very good sites. I mean, flying the coast when it's very thermic inland can be a good option. I mean, sometimes coastal sites can be quite fickle in terms of wind speed and wind direction, and it gets harder to, in my mind, to predict how reliable coastal sites are, especially as you go in towards summer. But yeah, I think all sites are very good as long as you're not making life unnecessarily difficult for yourself. But I would recommend it. But do coordinate with others, and do get well briefed about the site, and be sensible about your choice in terms of your own ability. And you know, it's far better to have a good day on a familiar hill early on in the season than try and be adventurous and have a bad day going to a site that you haven't flown before, and then find out everyone else has had a brilliant day and you've had a lazy day just driving around all over the country and not flying.
Thanks, Rob. Anybody want to add any bits? I know Richard. Thanks, Richard, for talking us, you know, through EAP. I think Russ Lockley is on the call as well somewhere. Obviously, you know, people will be keen to go and fly those sites. I suspect, you know, crowding is going to become a bit of a problem. And EAP doesn't, certainly the EAP takeoff, as Richard said, isn't the greatest. It has a landslip, and if it's crowded, it's not the best. Ringstead might be slightly better. I don't know if Russ, are you on the call, Russ? What's your thoughts on first day, certainly at somewhere like Ringstead? Is he not there? Maybe he's not. Okay, let's go to Tim Bishop then. Tim, I've heard this said before, actually, interestingly, and it's, I think we all probably do something similar. But so the question is, I normally set myself a max of around 16 miles an hour for takeoff. What limit should I choose for the first few days back?
Okay, well, I reckon there's 2 or 3 bits to that. First things first is don't make the mistake I did when I started and not get a wind speed meter. So get a wind speed meter and get on the takeoff or your ground handling field and remind yourself what the wind speed feels like. So get it out and check it. The next thing is you have to recalibrate yourself, really. It goes with what Wes and Tim are saying about ground handling. When you go out and do your ground handling pre-flying, take your wind speed meter with you, check the wind speed before you start. And if you take a break, check the wind speed again. And, oh, my bloody phone's ringing. And hang on a minute. Then check what you've been ground handling in, and then you can calibrate yourself. Personally, you know, we all have to make our own decisions. I'm going to drop it down quite a lot. I'm going to accept the fact, like, say, for example, I'm flying at Westbury. I might be quite close to the point where I'm accepting the fact that I'm going to be doing sled rides. I'd rather be doing a sled ride and going in and practicing my landings than launching in something that I'm not comfortable with. So the short answer is get a wind speed meter, recalibrate yourself, and be prepared to launch in much weaker conditions to keep yourself safe.
Can I add to that, Sean?
You certainly can, sir.
Okay, so what wind are we talking about? Is the wind bang on the hill? Perfect, absolutely perfect conditions. Is it windy and thermic? Is it the wind slightly off the hill? Is it a laminar sea breeze wind? All of these things are factors that you need to take into consideration. don't put a number on. I don't understand this, why people put a number on the wind that they're going to fly in. 15 mile an hour on a spring punchy thermal day is not 15 mile an hour at 8 p.m. laminar flying at Westbury when the sea breeze comes in. So your wind meter or your previous experience is useless. It's not. If you're going to gauge it by a number, like the person, I forget who it was, I'm sorry, I forget who said 16 miles an hour. 60 miles an hour when? In 12 o'clock midday on a summer's day when there's thermals, or 16 mile an hour in the evening, 16 mile an hour at Eep, or 16 mile an hour at Froster, when there's no way you're launching at 16 miles an hour at Froster. It's, you know, it's the wind speed is only going to be relevant to those days. I fly quite strong wind, but I'm also, that wind comes down dramatically if it's really thermic, because I don't want to launch into what I think is strong wind and then hit the back end of a thermal or the front of a thermal. Also, you can be stood on a hill all day long and it's 10 miles an hour, then you feel it pick up. If you're not used to the fact that what you're feeling on your face is a thermal, you think, oh, it's good to fly, and you're going to launch straight into a thermal. So I think be careful with picking numbers of, oh, I won't fly past 16 miles an hour. Have a look at what other people are doing around you. If other people are launching and they're launching fine, if you can get the wing above your head and maintain it, launch and fly, right? I mean, if you feel uncomfortable, even if it's the wrong decision, just don't launch. It'll never be the wrong decision not to fly. The wrong decision is going to be when you fly and realize it's too much for you. So even if you get it above your head and it was perfectly fine and you'd have been okay, but you didn't feel it, so what? So what? You didn't feel it, so you didn't fly. Hey ho, nothing lost. I think that's better than saying 16 miles an hour, launching because it's 15 miles an hour, and then finding out that it's bumpy and horrible. Everybody here who flies Westbury, I'm using Westbury for an example because we all fly it. Anyone here who's flown Westbury has been up recently and come back down and said, it is horrible up there. I didn't enjoy that at all. But on the hill, it was absolutely perfect. The wind was 12 miles an hour and it felt really good. So I think the number thing of 15 mile an hour, 16 mile an hour, all this stuff is just look at the conditions, feel how the wind feels. Look, what are the other pilots doing around you? Let an idiot like me be the first to take off and see what happens. You know what I mean? And then you stand back and say, oh, Wes looks like he's having a kick and I'm not going up there. Like, just do something like that. Or I'll probably be one of the people waiting on the ground, waiting for someone else to get a kick in. But wait on the ground, irrespective of what your wind meter says, until you feel comfortable to fly.
That is a really, really interesting point you raised there, Wes. You know, and I always say to the low air timers, you know, just because you turn up to a hill and there's 5 gliders flying and they look to be having a great time, it doesn't mean it's appropriate for you. It doesn't mean those conditions are right for you. So, you know who's flying, know what your limits are, know what gliders are flying, and only then, you know, decide to fly or not. So great point, Wes. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like I've flown at Westbury in 26 miles an hour wind. I've launched in Westbury, 26 mile an hour wind. Some of the guys here were there. I launched, I flew, and it was some of the nicest flying I've ever had at Westbury once I was up in the air. I was on a comp glider, but it was quite nice. It wasn't punchy because it wasn't thermic. It wasn't so bad. I've also launched at 3 mile an hour into a thermal, climbed up thinking it'd get better, and got my ass kicked for 40 minutes and couldn't wait to get down. So it's just a case of assess what's going on and then fly those conditions.
Yeah, can I just say 26 mile an hour is generally not a good wind speed.
No, I certainly wouldn't recommend it, definitely.
Yeah. Sean, can I make a few points there? I mean, you know, in our club over the last few years, we've lost 2 pilots, both as it happens in different bowls at Mere, because the wind was off the hill. Okay, and when the wind gets stronger, flying in bowls, especially when it's thermic, can be potentially quite dangerous. Okay, so in particular places like Mere, Milk Hill, White Horse Bowl, especially when it's thermic and the meteo wind is quite strong, you do need to be very sure that the wind directions are perfect for those bowls. And just because other pilots are flying when you arrive doesn't mean it's safe to actually fly it. So what I always suggest at Mere and at Milk Hill in particular is you should always walk to out of the bowl, because the wind always feels on in a bowl, whether it is or not. So always walk away from the bowl out to a spur and actually find out what the proper wind direction is. I don't see many people doing it, but really we should do it. So especially stronger winds combined with strong thermic conditions can be a nightmare in a lot of the sites that we fly. We must be very careful about them. There's less of an issue at places like Westbury, Selsley, Froster, but the bowls in particular we have to be careful. Haresfields is another classic case, especially talking about wind strength. If you go onto the launch at Haresfield, and you might measure it at 10 miles an hour, but then you walk out to the hill fort and you might find it's 20 miles an hour. And so if you launch at Haresfield, it's very easy, speaking from experience, to get pinned in the back of the Southwest Bowl, unable to push forward. So really, as I said, just because other people are flying doesn't mean that you shouldn't go and check it out for yourself and then decide not to fly, or just do the groundwork basically before you leave the ground, you take off yourself. So as I said, just be very careful in several of those sites, especially when it's thermic.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Rob, I remember I've only lived in the West Country for about 10 years now, and so although I'd flown the sites like Froster and Westbury, I remember Wayne Seeley, God rest him, taking me up to Froster. Oh, it's got to be 10 years ago now, and he frog marched me, to the point, the trig point at Froster, and said, Sean, when you come and fly here, you need to come and assess what the true wind direction is, because on takeoff it can be very, very different. So I think you're absolutely spot on. Don't just stand where you think the wind is and assume that that's where it is when you've got any kind of bowl effect. And I think Dave Neal actually has just pointed something out quite similar at Froster, in the fact that the trees can create a bowl effect in their own right. Dave, do you want to say anything about that? Dave Neal?
Yeah, I can, Sean. Yeah, just to say, I heard what you said, Rob, and yeah, I take your point about Froster not being quite the same as some of the bowls at Mere, for example. But yeah, I consider Froster fairly advanced sort of site because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of topography around. There's the Cam Long Down just down the way. So yeah, that's a site where you, as Sean said, the ideal scenario, you walk out. It's only 150 meters out to the little lookout point there and see what it feels like, because it can give you a much truer feeling. And what you will find as well at Froster is, for example, when it's southwesterly, if there's any south in it whatsoever, and it's remotely light, you take off expecting to get up above the trees, and you just get flushed down the, down to the north. There's a lot of people that know the site will know. So yeah, it's just exercise caution. Place anywhere like that, really.
Okay, let's ask another one, and I'd like to ask Tim Bishop this one, but I'm not. It's an interesting one. So let's ask Rob Kingston this one then. So, and to be honest with you, I find this an interesting question. My reserve hasn't been packed for 2 years. Should I just assume it will be okay?
Yeah. Personally, I wouldn't. I mean, the way I look at a reserve, and I speak as someone who's thrown a reserve and it saved my life, is that when you come to throw a reserve, you're already drinking at the last chance saloon, because you've got to know that you can both deploy it and it's going to open quickly and you really need that confidence that everything has been checked through. So for myself, I wouldn't leave it 2 years. Even if you've got a brand new reserve, you need to repack it straight away. There's been a case, totally, Tim will tell me whether I'm right or wrong, that of a new reserve come in, which has actually had lines over which wouldn't have opened. So
one last year.
Well, yeah. So just because you've got a brand new reserve, it needs repacking straight away. You need to know that that reserve has been routed through your harness correctly. You need to practice how it's going to be pulled, and that you can do it routinely. So in an ideal world, you would go to a club repack, which we've normally had and other clubs have had. So, but even if you can't do that, I would strongly recommend do a test pull on your own harness to make sure that you can get your reserve out. Don't throw it, just make sure that you can actually bring it out of your harness under control, then don't throw it, so you won't need to repack it, and know how it goes back together again into your harness. I mean, I've seen over my flying career, I've seen 3 people taking off where as they take off their reserve out the harness and inflates. I've seen that 3 times now, and in all cases they've managed to get away with it. But do take care with your harness and your reserve, and certainly do get it checked. So if you're not flying to the end of March and you haven't repacked your reserve or had it repacked in the last couple of years, then what's stopping you? Get it sent off and get it repacked now. And there's packers around who'll do it, and you'll have it all done for the 29th. So I don't think it's any excuse. And honestly, when you need it, you need it.
I completely agree, Rob. Just to add to that, there's 2 sides to this. One is the standard line of follow the manufacturer's instructions, and there's a surprising number of parachutes, of paragliding emergency parachutes, where the instruction is actually to repack it every 6 months. The manufacturer says if you want it to deploy as fast as the certification, then you should really repack it every 6 months. And the other one is just the sort of psychological factor, and it really is as simple as this. I'm always happiest in flight when I know my wing is serviceable and I'm sitting on top of a freshly repacked reserve. It just makes me more relaxed in flight.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that's said there. Get those reserves packed. I do mine twice a year. I'm lucky enough to be able to pack my own. We've got packers in the club, so get it checked. There's no excuse. There is absolutely no excuse, because I remember, I think it's Jockey Sanderson, one of his videos, he talks about your reserve not being your second chance. It's almost certainly your last, because that's it. So when it comes out, it needs to come out, and it needs to come out clean. So yeah, thanks for that. Russ has messaged me. Russ, are you there? Are you back on the call, Russ? He just doesn't want to talk to us, you see.
I can see him. I can see his thing there. iPhone Russell Lockyer. I can see him.
Yeah, he just doesn't want to talk to us.
He's muted. He might not know that he's muted.
Yeah.
Bottom left. Sort it out, Russ.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
Yeah.
Russ, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, I've been here a while.
Russ, can you? So we're fortunate. We're lucky enough to have yourself and Richard on, who's our kind of man down in the southwest, I suppose, Devon and Somerset. Obviously, we've got yourself, who, for those that don't know Russ is an absolute diamond to the Avon and friend to the Avon club, and supports us when we go down there. Russ, do you want to just just say a few things about, you know, us coming down to your sites, you know, once we unlock?
I did put a message up. I thought it was for you, but it's gone to everybody. Ringstead, fabulous site. When we get to fly, it's going to be very, very busy, not just with pilots of all persuasion, but we're going to have a lot of tourists there parked up. You know, it's a fabulous viewpoint, starting place for walks, going down to the beach, blah, blah, blah. Please, everybody, read the site guide. We've got a few restrictions at the moment. The back landing field is out of bounds unless you're a red ribbon in problems. Please speak to a club coach or an experienced pilot. Most of the Avon guys who've been there know it now like the back of their hands. They're well versed with all that goes on at Ringstead, and many have enjoyed a fabulous coast run there. Just remember, you're coming back into flying after a long spell away. There are thermals on the ridge and there are thermals on the cliffs. Please be careful. Please, please be careful. We had a lot of accidents there last year. We don't want a repeat of that. Please come. You're always welcome. It's a fabulous place to fly. We'd love to see you. Just one last point. Tandems and hang gliders. Give them the space and the time to launch, please. Don't be impatient. Don't be greedy. Let everybody have a go. That's all I got to say, folks. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Ross.
Appreciate that. And Russ is definitely a good point of contact, guys. If you are going down that way, he's lucky enough to be retired. I don't think I've ever been to the coast, and Russ has not been out. So, you know, use him and Richard as well. Richard's always down there. So, yeah, we're lucky to have those two guys and those two clubs supporting him. So thanks, guys. Where should we go next? Who fancies a question? Wes, do you fancy a question?
Why not?
Why not? What have we got? What can we ask Wes? Oh, there you go. So what signs should I see as warnings or reasons to maybe wait out and not launch, Wes? That's interesting. That could cover a whole plethora of things.
Yeah. I think the number one thing would be nobody flying. If you're at a point where you're not sure, then certainly don't be the first person to take off. If nobody's flying, look around and ask yourself why. Also, maybe go up and say to someone, it seems all right. How come no one's flying? Like your biggest danger is your ego, right? That's going to be your biggest danger. It's the same with base jumping, skydiving, paragliding. Being embarrassed or having too much ego to go up to someone and say, what's going on is your biggest problem. Listen, you've all heard me talk. It's obvious to everyone I'm not worried about making a prat of myself. And neither should you be, because we've all done this. We've all been in a position where we don't know the answer. So if there's something that's bothering you, if anything that's slight bothering you, that worry shared with anyone is better. So if you're on the hill and you're thinking, oh, I really want to fly, but I'm not sure about it, share it with somebody, talk to like one of the coaches on the hill and just say, like, listen, I want to fly, but I'm a bit worried about this wind from here. And then someone might say, you know, that's just a phenomenon that happens at this site, or you're overthinking this. But any of your worries, share them, don't harbor them, because I bet a lot of the pilots on here will say they've ruined perfectly good, safe, normal flights because they've created this little bit of doubt in their head before they took off and they haven't been able to relax while they're flying. So sharing those worries is going to make a big difference. Now, things that you should look out for when you, like, conditions. Was it conditions, Sean, you were asked, the question was about?
Yeah. So, you know, what are the warning signs or the reasons maybe to wait out and not launch?
Okay, right. So the biggest one I'm going to mention, and because it's a real pet peeve of mine, other people flying. Like, if you're on a hill and the wind is, say, marginal and everyone's at ridge height and there's 20 gliders already, I guarantee you the last thing that ridge needs is a 21st pilot. If there's 10 of you flying and nobody's going up and you're all at ridge height, that's probably too many. Even on a really big ridge, if everybody's scratching around ridge height, what do you want to go and join them and scratch for? everybody puts this big emphasis on XC flying and stuff, but we can't forget ridge soaring is the most dangerous part of our sport. Being close to the ridge is the most dangerous part of the sport. So if nobody's going up, if nobody's flying away from the hill, don't be in a rush to go and join them. Have a look at what they're doing. The other one will be, of course, don't let your eagerness or keenness to fly push you into flying in conditions that are wrong. Look out for the wind. Look out for, is it firmic? What are other people doing? Is it the middle of the day? Should I maybe sit this one out for a little while? Yeah, all the normal elements I think we've covered in a lot of other questions that have been asked tonight are all applicable. There's no real danger. If you see a tornado, probably don't fly. I mean, that's definite. But other than that, it's all elements that you would normally be cautious of. Don't now not be cautious of them because you haven't flown for a while.
Thanks, Wes. I got quite a lengthy one from Tony Moore, which I'd like to share actually, because that it kind of leads on from what you've just said, and it leads into another question that we might ask. So I'll just read Tim, a question for Tim. I think this is a good one for the chief coach, and then let me go straight into what Tony Moore has said, and then perhaps we can come back to you, Tim. So what type of problems as a rusty, maybe low airtime pilot do you think you will encounter once in the air? And I think we're specifically thinking about, that first flight again, Tim. Now let me read what Tony Moore has pushed. I'm not sure if Tony's on the call, but so Tony said, oh, there he is. Hello, Tony. So in fact, Tony, do you want to read it or do you want me to read it? I'll do it. He's gone all shy. He's gone all shy. So, coming from a pilot with buckets of experience and thimblefuls of currency, I see the most hazardous aspect of our anticipated return to the air is overcrowding. Yeah, absolutely. To me, the most likely incident will either be a mid-air or a spin stall caused by a radical input to avoid a mid-air. In my 25 years of flying, I am in no doubt that our sites have become busier than ever. And that, coupled with a bunch of enthusiastic rusty pilots, is an accident waiting to happen. I have no idea how to avoid this. Maybe you do. But maybe we should be really very careful about taking off into busy skies, possibly asking more confident pilots to stand down when they have had their fill in order to allow other more nervous pilots a chance. Tim, do you want to offer something there?
Yeah, it's the taking your time thing again. I think when we get out there and we're going to fly, it's just really being there for the day, being there for the whole day. Don't give yourself any restrictions. Got to be home by this time. Got 2 hours. Just be there for the whole day. Take your time. And I'm many a time I've just not bothered to fly because there's been 60 pilots in the air and it's got scratchy and people landing everywhere. It's like somebody's dropped a handful of dust into the sky. Suddenly people are in fields, fences, trees. I think it's to take your time, watch what's going on, and just think, do I want to be in that mix, in that churn? Because, yeah, that's the problem we've always had, is the mixture of hang gliders and paragliders, for one. So you've got, you're trying to turn back round and have a little thermal, but you've misjudged the hang glider. It's absolutely hammering down the ridge at a different speed. So, like Russell said, give way to tandems if they're up. I'd like to think that nobody would probably be out on a tandem on the first day back. Just give that a rest for a bit. But give way to hang gliders for sure. If it gets scratchy, definitely give hang gliders lots of space. I think everybody needs to share on that first day back and not just all pour into the sky. Just take your time, watch, and look for opportunities when you can have a fly and maybe sit it out and let the low air timers have a fly. Places like Westbury, I've seen that work really well. And then I've seen times when a comp has turned up at Westbury and it was absolute disaster, where there was just a lot of competition and competitive pilots and rushing going on, everybody wanting to fly. But yeah, I think right back to take your time.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I think we said right at the start, and of what Wes just said actually as well. you know, Westbury will take 60 pilots on an absolutely outstanding day, you know, with lots of vertical and lateral separation. But on that day where everyone's, you know, 40, 50 feet above the ridge, you know, half a dozen probably at the most. So yeah, Tony, do you want to offer anything on your comment? It was a really good one. Thanks for sharing that with us.
It's one thing I just wondered if there were any other pilots. I know this is possibly a side issue, but let's share my perception of how crowded our sites have become, or am I just become more nervous as I'm getting older? And I'm not just looking at this from flying hang gliders. Anybody that knows me long enough knows that I started off flying paragliders, and I'll probably fly. I'm 50-50 now anyway. So it's just, am I alone in thinking that our sites are getting dangerously crowded?
Well, you're not alone. I feel the same way.
It's interesting, Tony. I mean, I lived in London for 20 odd years and spent, you know, the early part of my flying career, certainly the first 15 years in London, and flying some of the, you know, the Devil's Dyke and the Southern Club sites. And, you know, back in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, those sites were horrendously crowded. And I remember, you know, coming up to Westbury and places like Mere and thinking, my God, this is just another world. Nobody lives here. These guys don't fly. You know, you don't see anybody in comparison. So, yeah, I hear it. You know, whether they're seeing it, you know, the same on those Southern Club sites, you know, whether they're seeing increase. I mean, goodness knows if they are. They must be having a horrendous problem. But yeah, I think I probably agree with you, Rob.
Sorry, mate. 2 secs. Because this was said, dangerously overcrowded. There's a few ways of looking at it. 150 PWC pilots can launch off of a tiny little hill and all fly harmoniously. If there's 30 people on the hill, it can be overcrowded, but not dangerously overcrowded. And then there can be 7 people on the hill, and it can be dangerously overcrowded. It's not just about the quantity of pilots that are there. If it's a light wind day and there's only one thermal coming through, and you've got to launch in that thermal, and 10 of you launch into it, 10 pilots on a hill the size of Westbury trying to get into one thermal will be dangerously overcrowded. At the same time, 20 pilots on a day that's good will seem like it's nothing. So it's not necessarily the quantity of pilots. That's an assessment of the conditions as well. Don't look in the air and see 50 pilots flying and think that's dangerously overcrowded. If you can launch and there's space to launch, you can fly and there's enough separation. It's if those conditions switch off, everybody's got too much pride or doesn't want to walk up from the bottom landing field, so they all try and get in really quickly and land on the top, and then you're all flustered and everyone's making mistakes. But at the same time, if 15 people flying seems overcrowded to you, then just don't fly for a while. It's, you know, don't feel embarrassed about the fact that 15 people to you seems overcrowded, but to someone else 35 doesn't. If you're not comfortable, I can't come and save you on your wing and make you feel comfortable. So if you're not comfortable, don't launch. Wait until you're comfortable to launch. And then as time goes on, you'll build that up as you fly with more and more people.
I wasn't really making this comment from a personal perspective towards the danger, because I can easily assess exactly what you've just said, where somewhere like Mere, if it's scratchy, if there's 4 pilots in the bowl, I won't take off.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere like Westbury, yeah, it'll take hundreds of pilots on the right day, without a doubt. I just have many times spoken to low airtime pilots who've sat on the hill all day at Westbury, and they've walked away, but they haven't flown because of the volume of pilots that are in the sky. And I feel for them. I felt for them, you know, and it's I could just see this happening in some ways, and I don't know. It's especially sort of this time of the year. It's getting better, but whether the position of the sun in the evening at Westbury this time of the year, it can be really, really nasty when you're beating down towards the town, away from the White Horse. And I don't know. It's just, to me, it's a big hazard and enough is not made of it to get people to be more aware of the hazard.
It's what I think that it's not that enough's made of it, Tony. I think what happens is, and I'm sure I've been guilty of this as well. What happens is everyone at one point is the new pilot who wishes there was less people flying, and they think, look at this, I can't even get a chance. I want to fly. This feels a bit dangerous. And then 10 hours later, they're one of the people who are flying and not giving the consideration about the people who are on the hill, thinking, oh my God, there's lots of people not flying.
I was lucky because when I started, it wasn't like that, you see. So I don't really know how that feels, because when I started flying, seems to me like there was hardly anyone doing the game. But now, obviously, it's a very, very popular sport in comparison to how it was 25 years ago. Luckily, the performance of the wings has improved, so does tend to be a bit more height separation than there was in those days.
Gents, if I may, I think I can probably help simplify part of this. I hear what you're saying, Tony, and I agree. I know what you mean about the numbers, and especially after a layoff, people are going to be eager to get back, and so on and so forth. There is danger, of course there is, but I'd like to think, well, I'm pretty sure the people on this call would appreciate that there's a solution, and that's simply to communicate with each other. So when you, as Wes says, when you turn up on a site and you wonder why a certain condition is taking place, why people are flying, why people are not flying, is to just communicate with each other. The danger, I think, will come from those people that won't do that, that will just tip up and just fling themselves into the air, with sort of gay abandon, for want of a better word. So the key that we should put out there, definitely, and that's one for coaches and us all really, is spread the word. Talk to people. Don't just go and do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick Valeris, I just saw your message pop up, Nick. I've seen this quite a bit, as a low airtime coach, picking up the boys and girls coming over, from our BHPA schools overseas. Do you want to just reiterate what you said in the message there, Nick? Are you still here? No.
Yeah, coming off mute. You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just a point. I've seen it over the last few years, and I'm sure you have as well, where we're seeing increasing numbers of this, and some pilots who have gone on these courses. I mean, they're great courses. I mean, it's consolidated training. They can do it in a week or 2 weeks, and it's great for that sort of currency aspect. But the problem is that those new pilots haven't learned over, say, 6 months or a year, which they might have taken in the UK school, learning on the local sites, learning to fly on what we would normally, our local site, the conditions, the UK conditions. So they really struggle, and that's where they, if they don't put their hand up in advance and say, look, I've just come out of a school abroad, I'm not really that confident to fly in the UK conditions, I haven't done it, and they haven't put their hand up in advance to say, I'm about to go out the same day as everybody else on the first day out, or whatever it may be, then, it can lead to lots of problems. And I think they just need an extra caring hand to help them along the way. And also, the other key thing which people may have not recognised is that a lot of these schools abroad have been given a let out in some of the tasks for the CP, which mean they don't have to do things like slope landing tasks. That's then left for them. They get the CP. That's left to the coaches back in the UK to sign off those tasks. So there's nothing stopping the new pilot coming in and actually trying to fly it themselves and doing the first slope landing. Crazy as it may seem, but you may find that you go up in a day, somebody has never done a slope landing or a top landing, to be quite honest. So the top landing is less of a requirement because a lot of sites have bottom landing fields. But if you're at Westbury, you don't want people landing in the field at the bottom because they haven't done their top landing tasks. So I would urge really people who have come from some of those schools abroad and haven't got those tasks signed off, look at your task sheet. You should have a copy of it from the school you came from. And if you need those tasks signed off, put your hand up, ask for the help. And coaches are there to do that very job. So really what I was going to say.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. And I think you're absolutely right. throwing that into a sporty day at Westbury with a mixture of experience of pilots, new pilots haven't done top landings before, pilots coming straight out the school. It's definitely something, going back to what Tony was saying, that we do need to be aware of. I do think there are more people. There are genuinely more people on the hill than I ever remember. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Anybody want to throw any last thoughts before?
Well, I've got a few points there. So people who aren't experienced or are worried really need to enlist the help of our coaches. That's what they've been trained for. I would thoroughly recommend anyone who's got a red ribbon to use it. I would be very tempted not to throw it away until you had done maybe 25 or 50 hours if you're flying at somewhere like Westbury, just so people will give you a wide berth. And I think when there are people flying on a hill, it's important that that you understand the rules of how to fly in an orderly manner, and it does get difficult, especially when it gets thermic and suddenly people start breaking patterns because they want to climb out of it. But predictability is very important, and adherence to collision avoidance rules is essential. And we always meet people on the hill who you would think have never been taught how they should try to avoid other people on a hill. So it's important that if you see people shouting at the air, may not be the best thing. When you land, go and have a nice, relaxed chat, because it's always good, because some people aren't aware that they're doing things wrong. As I said, just and if you feel uncomfortable, land or don't take off. But I agree, it's an increasing problem. And the last time I flew was on a busy day at Westbury with low sun, the one Tony's talking about, and I was glad to land. It was uncomfortably busy.
Yeah, I remember that day, Rob. Very little separation, low sun, lots of pilots, not a good combination. Russ, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, I've got to agree with Nick big time. But what I'm noticing, certainly in the last couple of years, there are definite trends with new pilots. And I'm very concerned now, because there's been no flying for such a long time, and we've got a tranche of students busting a gut to get out on the hill. So club coaches are going to be overworked quite severely when we actually get to fly. My concern is, certainly when I started, people were willing to listen, people were willing to have that positive feedback and do something with it. But nowadays, especially with the younger generation, and no offense here, folks, but they do not like positive feedback. And this is a worrying trend in my mind. They arrive at the hill, they've got all the gear, they've got a camera on their helmet, they've got a wing, maybe that's a little bit tasty for them out of school, but they think they know better. And we end up having accidents. Enough said.
Also, though, I think you've neglected. I don't disagree with you, Russ. You know me. If I disagree with you, I'd tell you. I don't disagree with you at all. But a lot of our accidents in recent years have been from very experienced pilots. So let's not overemphasize the fact that there's lots of experienced pilots might be listening to this who will also need the same to follow the same suit. So I know that's not necessarily where you were aiming your statement at, but I do think as well it's important that we say, this is aimed at everyone. It's not simply just for low airtime pilots. The reason I agreed to do this talk and when I was asked was because I'll be being cautious. But it's that simple. And experienced guys, Tim Carr, like one of the most experienced pilots we've got, will be being cautious. Don't just think because you're 50 hours past pilot rating that you don't have to be cautious as well. You may have just simply forgotten that. So yeah, it's to be a stark reminder to all of us that the deaths that we've had recently have been from very experienced pilots on hills that they've had a lot of experience flying.
Absolutely agree with you, Wes. Absolutely. I wasn't just aiming that at low air timers and newbies, because I always speak to every pilot on the hill if I think they've done, something that might be out of the ordinary or possibly dangerous. And the guys know me. I'm quite direct. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm quite direct.
You're not rude, Russ. You just believe in what you teach and support us, and we thank you for that. Conscious of time, I did want to try and wrap it up at 8:30. I know people have got families and some of us have not had tea yet. Is there any other bits before I'm really going to go probably to Tim Carr for our last question, but is there any other bits that anybody wants to cover off before, try and, pass this off? And as I say, I have recorded this. I will put it out there for people to share. Is there anything anybody wants to, where's anything else you want to say?
I think people are fed up of hearing from me, I should imagine. Let's not overemphasize coming back. Let's not make it something that it's not. Everybody should be cautious, like they've had a layoff from flying. I've seen people talking about, I'm going to step down a wing and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Like, come on, let's be grown-ups and let's just say I'm going to be sensible. I fly an Enzo 3 and I will be flying my Enzo 3, and if the conditions aren't right, I'm not going to fly my Enzo 3. I'm not then going to look for another glider to fly. I'm going to be man enough to say, conditions aren't right for me to fly today, and I'm going to not fly, and I might help coach or I might do something. I just think that, we're not jumping into this brand new sport where razor blades are flying at us in a whirlwind of thunder. It's paragliding like it's always been. We've had an extra layoff. Let's all be sensible and let's take the opportunity to approach paragliding the way that we would have when we first begun. I think there's no reason to look at all this like I'm going to be because over caution won't necessarily keep you safe. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those making the right decisions and the right assessments. And I can't emphasize this enough. Talking to each other. That is going to be the number one factor.
Great, thanks, Wes, for that, and thanks for supporting us this evening. Tim Bishop, any other bits you want to cover off?
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. Grab your harness, put your harness on a few times, practice your pre-flight, just so that your muscle memory isn't rusty when you're on the hill. And while you're there, check your chest strap setting as well. Hang it up and make sure you've got the right chest strap setting on there. If you don't know what it should be, then look it up or ping me and I'll help you. And think about your helmet as well. Is it more than 5-10 years old? Just have a good shifty around all your kit.
Yeah, and those carabiners as well. We've seen some interesting pictures. They don't last forever, sadly. So yeah,
no.
Those carabiners.
And please feel free to ping me. Come straight to me if you want any help with your kit or your parachute.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for supporting us. Rob Kingston, any bits from you?
No, I think it's been very useful, and I think we will be flying hopefully at the end of the month, but it's hopefully quite a long season, so you don't have to do it all in one day.
Yeah. We're ready for a nice long season. I think everybody's ready for lots of reasons, notwithstanding COVID. So yeah, thanks, Rob. And the final one then to Tim, our chief coach. Tim, have you got anything? I'm going to ask you one final question actually, but is there anything else you want to say before I ask you that question?
Well, I was going to sort of summarise. I was going to try and summarise the rest of it, but fire the question at me.
Well, I was going to end on it. The classic, collision avoidance. But it goes back to what Tony was saying earlier on, and mid-airs. I was just going to ask you to remind everybody, of the collision rules.
Well,
but if
good
you,
idea will
then,
be.
if you want to, say your piece and then finish off with that.
Yeah, well, good idea for everyone to just go over it now, obviously, and when on the hill, just go over it and just walk around chatting about avoidance, because we haven't been doing it for so long. But simply avoid by turning to the right, and a little rhyme to remember: if the hill is on your right, you're in the right, so the other person should give way coming towards you. But the main thing is not to be stubborn and avoid.
Everybody's responsibility to avoid, absolutely.
Yeah, just avoid. But if the hill's on your right, you're in the right. You should be able to carry on. The other person should move away. And thermaling, be careful trying to thermal, because rusty pilots are going to be flying around. I can't see that the people will be thermaling very well at all on their first day back. So be careful when you're trying to thermal. But if I summarize, let me just summarize stuff up and use the coaches. Use the coaches. Prepare. All the talk has been about preparing your kit, preparing yourself, preparing the night before. Don't leave everything to the last minute. Then on the day, taking your time, not rushing, watching what's going on, deciding whether you actually want to fly right then. You've got the whole day. Ground handling. Make sure you've at least got some ground handling in beforehand. If not, on the day, ground handle, get in the backfield and ground handle. Don't be afraid to be coached and communicate. Ask everyone that's flown, what's it like, how you getting on, ask about the site. Just really take your time. And I think on my first time back, I shan't be flying a bowl of any sort. I'm going to actually avoid the bowls from what we were talking about. Interesting thing was said to me by Alex Coltman last year, after the pair of us had a bad day in Mir, getting thrown around all over the place. He said he was convinced when a thermal went up in one bowl, it dragged rotor from the opposite bowl, from Coward's bowl. And it made me think about it in a different way. So I think bowls in general are much more difficult to fly than ridges. So that's something to think about if you're going back. If it turns out to be a Mir day and you find yourself ending up at Mir, watch out, extra careful on bowls.
Thanks, Tim. So with that, it's 8:45. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Wes. Thanks, Tim. Or
Thank
to
you.
Tim, should I say? Rob, and hopefully we'll be on the hill very, very
Can
soon.
I just say as well before I sign off? Listen, if I'm on the hill and you want to come and ask me anything, don't hesitate. Come and ask me. And I think I speak for everyone who was on the panel. Come and ask me. It's not a problem. Don't think, I won't bother Wes. Come and ask me. I can either help you or I can't. But more by this, you should understand that I'll say, sorry, I can't help you. Go see so-and-so. But don't ever for a minute hesitate in approaching me and asking a question.
We will put coaches on the hill. On that first day, we will put, Tim is our chief coach. He's already talked about it. There will be coaches on the hill on that first day, so use them.
Yeah, I'm going to give a good push. Once we get a return date, I'm going to give a good push to get the coaches to start talking and offering their services.
Brilliant. Okay, guys, thanks for a great evening. Love to see some smiling faces. I will see you on the hill very soon.
Cheers.
Cheers all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.